Hey guys, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever applies to you. Welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Julia. I'm a contemporary singing specialist based in Australia, and today I am finally checking out all female heavy metal group Lovebites from Japan with their song Holy War. Now, some of you have been asking for me to react to this group for so long that now I'm finally doing it. This is for you guys. Let's do this. Ooh. Oh my god! Holy moly! That does oh gosh, okay. Okay, so our lead vocalist, I just looked up her name. Our lead vocalist is Asami, and my goodness, the ring in her sound is insane. The balance of ring and darkness in her vocal tone is just perfect, and her vibrato is so even, and it's balanced across her range as well. I'm gonna keep going. I need to hear more. We're only a minute 42 in, so I need to hear more. Oh my god! Holy shoot! Oh my goodness. It never sounds like her range is tapped out. Like, at all. She sounds so free up there. Okay, so I'll explain what it is that I'm listening for and why I'm kind of semi losing it over some of these things. Usually, if I'm listening to someone who is engaging in a mixed metallic belt, it gets to a point where there is a narrowing of the sound and it only sounds like you get that pingy quality through the singing. Then there are other singers who are able to maintain a little bit of space up into their belt, up into that pingy resonant sound. And you can hear that space. It adds the extra colors that we miss when we wind up going super, super high, super, super mixed, very metallic. By the time you hit that point of it narrowing so much that you're only getting that metallic quality, all of those other colors tend to disappear. And she is maintaining some really amazing colors up fairly high in her range. Like I need to go back and I need to pitch check some of this because my ear is saying it is very flipping high. And we've only had maybe like a note here or there where she starts to edge towards that. It gets narrower and you get mostly that metallic quality in the belts. You can't hear any other colors kind of in the sound. There's a couple of other both physical and vocal things that I will mention in a moment. But first, let's pitch check because she looks very physically connected, but also fairly relaxed through her movements. There's no like super intense points of tension that I'm IDing thus far. Some movement in the clavicle and a little bit of movement in the side of the neck, but nothing that's making my brain go, ooh, oh, so much tension. Like there's none of that. And I guess that's also present in her vocal production as well, because it does sound like there's enough freedom there, but there's also like obviously the constriction necessary to get the metallic sound, but her larynx doesn't sound like it's shooting up through the top of her head. Let's just do it from this last section. Okay, so for that note, we are up at an E5. Back up to F5. Okay, so she is repeatedly and without fail hitting a perfect mixed belt with vibrato and a little bit of extra color in that sound on an E5. Oh my god. I'm gonna keep listening. Okay, I know that there was no singing in that section, but I just wanted to say it always looks really impressive to me when two people are able to play in perfect synchronization at those kinds of speeds. Because, I mean, if you're even out by a moment, it starts to sound a little bit off. There are a few little moments there where it didn't seem like it was perfectly synchronized between the guitars and the kit, but it was like it was only like one little section, and to be honest, it's moving so quickly, I maybe have just misheard that. But it always looked really impressive to me when two people are able to play at fast speeds, perfectly synchronized. Like that to me always looks really impressive. But perhaps that is because my fingers are not particularly dexterous. So I see someone moving that quickly and that accurately, and I go, "Whoa!" Also, question, guitarists, is it hard to do the thing where they use their right hand to make the notes on the neck of the guitar as well? I've only ever done like rhythmic guitar and not an acoustic, so I don't really do any of that. So I'm really curious. Let me know. I want to know. That was really cool. Let's finish out this marathon of a song, and then I'll check a few things. Holy moly, what a flippin' sprint that was. Jeez. Oh, God, how fast are we? How fast are we going? This is my first question because I mentioned recently in I think it was my Iron Maiden reaction, or maybe Caption Julia mentioned it. I remember thinking it so not helpful for you guys. Um, that depending on the BPM, this makes things like articulation and stamina very different beasts. So I want to know how fast we are. First and foremost, let me get out my metronome because it feels pretty flippin' fast. Okay, so it looks like we're sitting, this is me assuming that they're playing in like a double time feel, 160, because if that is, so that's going like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. If it's going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, then they're playing at over 300 beats per minute. Which I mean, if they're in a double time field, so they are playing it. So the speed of their playing is like 300 beats per minute if we were to look at it that way. But the actual counting of how I would count the bars, I think is sitting around that 160, which is we're just very fast in that 160. And if we track that back to the whole reason I even brought it up, vocally, the faster something needs to be sung, the more intense it can be on your voice, the more stamina is required. So there are a lot of very high notes that she is returning to quite frequently. But if we notice her phrasing, so if we listen to the vocalist phrasing, she seems to be sitting more in that like 160 speed, that 160 BPM. That kind of speed feels very comfortable for her phrasing, even though the instruments around her are going crazy. But it's very easy as well to get hyped by the feeling of speed happening around you. So she's doing a really good job of keeping herself locked into the time and providing enough energy that it matches the instrumentation without getting carried away by the speed of the instruments that are happening around her. Now I could be wrong, maybe it is that super fast crazy BPM and she's actually just singing significantly slower than the speed of how the other instrumentals have internalized that BPM. Anyway, so Asami's vocals, there's a maturity in her sound, like a darkness I wasn't expecting, and her larynx I think is sitting a little bit lower to give us that vocal quality, whilst at the same time still of course moving to facilitate the fact that she is singing some really really high notes here. Actually, I would say that she didn't leave the first register at all in this song, and so that means she's taken up a pretty darn heavy mix all the way up. I think it was to this, F5. That was the highest note that I tracked when I paused just before, was that F5, which is crazy. And F5 is nuts. And for her to have the energy to maintain that the entire time from like beginning to end, in some ways, it actually reminds me of Brittany Slays from Unleash the Archers, because Brittany is also another vocalist who's able to take up that really high metallic sound without it sounding so closed off and like narrowed to the point where you don't really get any other colors out of the sound. I mean, don't get me wrong, this is a super metallic, super twangy vocal quality that, I mean, both vocalists, but we're talking about Asami here, that Asami is using in order to get up that flipping high. But I don't hear too many vocalists who are able to maintain that kind of relaxed space. Uh, as she ascends as well. So the biggest indicator to me that there's a freedom to her quality is the fact that her vibrato is really even. And so it sounds like a breath based vibrato as opposed to something that's being like kind of like mechanically put in, which some other singers can utilize. And some people just naturally have a faster vibrato. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's something about a slightly more even vibrato, which Asami is using, and it's still got the full color in it. It doesn't just sound like a shudder in the sound that makes me think of that as breath based. However, at the same time, it's still a super intense sound. So you need to give yourself time to recover from that and just make sure that you're well hydrated, you're eating right, things like that, so that your body is still capable of producing these like super intense, crazy noises at a really high efficiency so you can just use it for a long period of time. This is nuts. As far as vocal techniques go, she's using twang, she's got that beltiness. There's also a little bit of distortion sometimes coming into her onsets. But I guess the main thing that I actually wanted to talk about was how much breath she actually drives into some of these onsets that she uses. So I'll see if I can find an example, and then I'll just chat about it a little bit because she uses it quite. She used it fairly frequently. I didn't want to mention it at the beginning in case it was like a once off, but she actually used it throughout. So let me find it. Now, sometimes when she did this, she got a little bit of distortion in her sound, which can crop up if you're using like compression and high breath flow rates. So just bear that in mind. There's like a tiny little explosion of breath. It doesn't come through in the sound. I'm saying it comes through in the energy of her sound. She like kicks off the phrase with it. Listen to the beginning of her phrase. There's just a little bit of extra oomph in her breathing as she starts the phrase, particularly on words that have a little H in it. That actually might be easier to hear. You can hear it on her H's. She really gets that H out there. Oh, so let's have a little listen. There we go, on that H there. So what you hear on that H there, that is her breath support, just extra little oomph and a little extra little energy, and she uses that similar approach, but you don't hear it quite as clearly because that H is well an unvoiced sound, so it's really easy to hear the with a little bit more breath through it because it has breath in it as a consonant. But that's what we're listening for. So let's hear that one more time. Again on that H there. So my point is, keep listening to it. You can hear it peeking out in moments. That is just a little bit of extra oomph from the breathing there. She might be using it to keep herself connected to make sure that that is coming through. Sometimes it can be a sign of people having excess tension in their sound, but because there isn't any continued tension after she uses that sound, it's still got constriction to it, but that's part of the style. She's not going to be able to get those stylistic tone elements if she doesn't use a little bit of constriction in her pharynx. And there are those other things that I mentioned before that are actually pretty good indicators of a kind of technique that will have more longevity. Anyways, that is where I'm going to leave that one today. Thank you so much for joining me and for suggesting this one. I'm so sorry it took so long for me to get to it. As usual, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a like, click the subscribe button and the bell notification beside it for more just like this one. As usual, I hope you're staying safe. Hope you are staying healthy, and I will see you next time. Bye. That feels to me more natural from a vocalist perspective if I was to think about that tempo in my brain.